Welcome to the Flock and Hive podcast, a place for curious minds to explore all that makes life so weird and wonderful. And this week,
my work is not a talking therapy. I'm very much of the mindset that if talking about it was going to help, you wouldn't be coming to me. There's just no point in you going round the same story. Let's just see where the energetic imbalances are. So we might use the magnet. We might place hands on the body. We might think things. But the yawning and the sighing, and sometimes people get tummy gurgles, where the nervous system is starting to release the stress and tension and let go.
We speak to kinesiologist Amanda Brooks. Hello and welcome to episode 14.
hello. Thanks for coming back.
It is all about kinesiology. What is that, I hear you ask? Well, guess what? We've got an expert to tell you. And she actually does a really good job because it's quite a lot going on, isn't it? It's a real smorgasbord of therapies all kind of rolled into one, but has its own very unique bent.
Well, even within kinesiology, it's a bit different. So kinesiology just started as one thing, and then it became another thing, which was a little bit more holistic around energy. And now with Amanda, it's something new once again that just focuses on the energetic bit. It's absolutely fascinating.
But interestingly, she started life as a chiropractor and it's really evolved into something really quite spiritual. But she really describes, doesn't she, the relationship between the science and the spiritual, which for the first time, I think the pennies really dropped for me because I know you've banged on about noetic science before. But if there was ever a practice that sums up and describes it and walks hand in hand with noetic science, it is this, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's that place where science and spirituality and energy meet, which is not very easy to define yet, but it's definitely a thing.
Yeah. As she describes it, it is a form of therapy. And I found it really interesting that she is saying that it's only just really now she's finding the impact, the fallout coming to the fore from the pandemic. So a good few years later, where I think people are really realizing that trauma and having to look at it more. And particularly, she was saying she has a lot of health anxiety sufferers, which would make sense because the ethos of kinesiology is reading the body to find any trauma that the brain isn't necessarily connected with. And I'm a real cheerleader for this because in my brand of anxiety, I very much somatize where the panic comes out in physical symptoms that then I translate as an actual illness and then freak out and go to the doctor when really I've had to learn over years that it's something more emotional going on, but it's just coming out in the body because it hasn't been processed. So for me personally, this is somewhere I would really like to go alongside talk therapy. And she says, doesn't she, that it's very much a complementary thing to other therapies.
Yes, exactly. I think no one therapy ever works perfectly just by itself, but it is such an interesting string to your therapy bow. And you know what? There is a word that sort of comes to mind when you talk about somatizing. Would you like to know what it is?
Is it fucked up?
No, because that is two words. This is in fact one word, and it comes from the Greek again. It is Alexithymia or Alexithymia, I'm not sure which. So it comes from the Greek which is without, lexis, word, and thymos or thymos, emotion. So alexithymia is the inability to identify and describe your own emotions within.
Welcome to my world.
And one of the symptoms is that you might confuse emotions with bodily sensations, like interpreting anxiety as a stomach ache, which we know like children often do, don't they, if they don't want to go to school. And like all your life experience of health anxiety, basically.
That's insane, isn't it? Because back in the day, it was just hypochondria and then sort of not talked about. Whereas I remember the day I found out that health anxiety was actually called health anxiety and not hypochondria, and it was a condition and it was on the NHS website, and it was like, you may be feeling this, 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 this. It just validates it and immediately gave a good 20 to 30% relief just by knowing it was a thing. So thank you, Alexithymia. I feel seen. Cheers.
That was like me when I discovered my HS penis.
you've actually had what I would consider health scares that you've been very, very chilled about. Like, are we related?
I'm the opposite of you because I've had, boob lumps and cancerous cells, and just refused to engage with how scary that might be until I have to. It's very, very opposite.
I mean, I do think it's having medical parents and them just really blatantly at the dinner table talking about their day to day. Like from a really young age, we were just really aware of what could go wrong with the body. And do you remember that fucking Mims magazine? Just casual casual mastectomies, pictures of just casual toilet reading. Like mum and dad had some really like hardcore medical journals.
Mims in the downstairs loo was a real lasting memory. In fact, I remember using that a lot. Remember, you have to make collages at school, and there was more than one on the body and parts of the body, and I just remember cutting out tongues and ears, but they all had something really gross wrong with them because they were Mims. But I didn't care.
We didn't know any better. You just thought that's what it is. But this is the first time I've even questioned the fact that we had those medical journals sitting next to the 101 Essex Girl joke book given to our dad by another man in a house full of women, just casually lying there for us to flick through. I mean, no wonder we're so messed up. I mean, we are Essex girls at heart.
Well, not just at heart. We grew up there.
But shout out to Essex. Love it. People are friendly. You're in London, but you're in the forest. And if you want your tits tan or teeth done, there are multiple options.
Yeah.
How does an Essex girl turn the light off after sex?
She shuts the car door.
Yeah. Oh, God, you must know them all. You big slaggy Essex girl.
Thank you. Yes, yes, I do. Along with every single word, every single advert ever created in the 80s. I do. Right, here you go. Here's some more. Why don't Essex girls use the pills contraception? It keeps falling out. It's awful. See, just again, 90s.
And can I just say, for the record, I have never once worn a white stiletto.
I have. I got married in them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Okay, I will take that as not counting. Anyway, we've moved quite far away from kinesiology. Should we come back to it?
Kinesiology is about movement.
That's true. The study of movement. There you go. That's what it sounds like, ladies and gentlemen. But I think now is a very good time to dive into our conversation with kinesiologist Amanda Brooks. Here's what she had to say. So, Amanda, can you explain to us, please, what is kinesiology and how does it differ from other types of energy-focused healing?
So kinesiology in its element is about the study of movement. So kinesiology itself came from chiropractors and osteopaths when they were looking to see the integrity of the muscles and how things would fall into place. Well, fall, but it is the way that the body would work and how things can, you can have a set of muscles that are working too well, some that are not working well enough. And so from that, they started to realize that depending on what the client was thinking would actually affect the muscle test response they got. So they started to look into what happens, how does that even make a difference? What you're thinking, how could that be? And then from the chiropractors and the osteopaths, the other forms of kinesiology have developed, and there are so many of them that are around, and they all focus like slightly different ways. Now, the other energy-based therapies that are around tend not to be asking the body questions. They're feeling more where the energetic flow is going. So with Reiki, for example, they would have their hands off the body and they'd be looking for where there are cold or hot spots, but they wouldn't be asking the body, what is it that you need? Whereas within kinesiology, providing, and it's the big part, you ask a closed question, then the body can feed back to you what it is that it needs, but it can only do it as a yes or a no. So you can't sort of like ask the question, oh, should I go to the shops right now? If you want to. But if you ask, like, is it appropriate and beneficial for my system on all levels right now to take this supplement? It will give you a definite yes or a definite no. And so that's where we use the kinesiology, and it's different. So you've got tapping. Again, that's not asking the body questions, but what it's doing is going all around a subject matter which is causing stress for the body, tapping certain points to get the body to be happier in the face of that stress. So with us asking questions within kinesiology, we then use a whole menu of different techniques to bring in the balance.
Okay, and the part of that that you really focus on, can you explain exactly what it is that you specialize in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do the tapping. I've looked into it. I think it's amazing. But no matter what I've gone into over the last 30 years, I always come back to the kinesiology, because when I'm working with people and I'm testing, okay, what is it that we need to do to address whatever their concern is? So it could be self-confidence, could be sleep disturbances, it could just be feeling anxious and irritable, but you don't really know why. And so what I'm doing is using almost like a menu, like on a computer, going, do we need to look into this folder? If it says yes, then we look in to see, till we get to the point where the body goes, yeah, if you do that one thing, it will start to bring balance back into my system. And so, as I say, over the last, 31 years. 31 years I've been doing the kinesiology, and I originally trained as a chiropractor, so that's how I got into everything. But what I found is that by using the kinesiology as the structure, the base of my work, it allows me then to bring in lots of different techniques. Now, for some people that are very much into the tapping, and they've told me that they use it regularly, I will sometimes give them homework of going and doing tapping on a certain sentence that their body's tested up they need in order for them to really move forwards. And that to me is so exciting, because it means no two sessions ever are the same. So yeah, so I get quite enthusiastic.
And how much of what you do is in person as opposed to online? Because I've always been fascinated by the fact that this can work at a distance and through Zoom.
Well, obviously, originally as a chiropractor, I saw people in the clinic and I would be working with them that way. But what ended up happening is that some of my clients, they'd be traveling abroad, they tell other people about me. And so about 28 years ago, I started working over Skype and phone with people that I'd never met. But at that point, I was using their voice as the link in to them. And then about 6 years ago, so before the pandemic, I was working, I would probably say 20% in person at my clinic, and then the rest was all online. And then what happened is sometimes people say, oh, I can't fit your time zone. Is there anything else that you can do? And then I started working remotely, and I'd been working remotely for my own family and friends for about 20 years. And so I said to the client, I said, well, I can try it. I can't promise anything, but let's see. If it works, then you can pay me. If it doesn't, you don't. And it worked so well that they told so many people that I was like, overnight, my whole business started to change into working remotely, as well as the little bit in the clinic. And then the rest of it was Skype and phone at that point. And then obviously when the pandemic happened, my clinic space didn't fit the requirements of the insurance company. So I just thought, well, I'd been in that space of do I or don't I for so long. So I just literally stepped into then Zoom, which still not always 100% sure about Zoom. But
But it's amazing that you had such success so quickly with people doing it remotely, because I think that is probably one thing that is really hard for people to get their heads around. Like energy, I kind of get having Reiki and have someone having their hands near me, but doing it over Zoom, it blows my mind. So how do you think how is this possible?
how is it
Can
possible?
yes, you
Yes.
mentioned quantum physics might have something to do with it.
Yeah, it's very much linked more into the quantum physics. And I think maybe not in my lifetime, but I do think that scientists will go on to prove so much more about it. But within quantum physics, you've got the linear domain and the non-linear. So the linear is where everything is provable. So you've got your science, you've got your mathematics, you've got your step-by-step guide. And basically, the scientists that are in that field go that nothing else exists. But the non-linear, that's about where there's no provable scientific research, because it's about what someone's experience is, what their feeling is. It's about because how do you measure love? How do
Exactly.
you measure spirit? How do you measure anything that doesn't fit into the scientific profile? So I do think that will change.
Mm.
But if you think that we have this energy, we've got the physical body, we're very aware of that. And I'm sure most of you have gone into a place and you felt like, oh, not because the temperature is different, but there's just something about the feel of that space. And that's because your energy field is picking up the energy that's around you that's been left in that place. And you'll either go, oh my gosh, I just need to leave, or oh gosh, this feels so amazing. And a time you do see this is when you're looking for a new home, and you will go into a home and you'll go into a place and you'll know whether you want to live there or not. Now, the kind of downside to that is if you are living in a place where the energy is very of a low vibration anyway, and you go into that place and it's similar vibration, it will feel like home. So what we're looking for is something that makes you feel even more peaceful, more at ease. So when I'm working remotely, I'm working on that energy, because we are in a way all interconnected, like a big, I call it like the web superhighway of the unconsciousness. And I can work remotely on people, providing I have their full name, their date of birth, and ideally a picture, but the picture has to be of just that person, so that I'm not picking up on the energy of the other. That might look like it was overnight, but I'd been practicing working remotely for a long time with my family and friends. And I'll be honest, I wasn't 100% convinced that it would work, but I have people all over the world. I've never met them. I've only ever emailed with them. And they're just going, you've made such a difference to my life. And I'm like, I sit here some days and I'm just in awe that the energy can be that way. And yet, of course, it can. Because how often do we feel happy or we will feel sad? We don't know why. And then we start to find out that, there's all these energies going on in the world.
How do you measure that exactly? Doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Of course. And I think that's the hardest part for people, all of us, to get our head around, is we can't see it. We can't measure it, but it's how we feel. And so the day people stop feeling the benefit of what I do remotely will be the day I will just stop working remotely, because I have to know in my soul that it really is doing what it's meant to be doing.
I think we're getting there. I've read something recently where someone has named it. They've called these sorts of things noetic sciences, where science as we know it, provable, black and white, meets more spiritual, holistic practices. And I think that's going to change quite quickly. I really hope it is, because because I personally know that there's so much more out there, and I've never really been sort of allowed to explore it until now. So, allowed in inverted commas. So can you talk us through, you've mentioned some of the reasons why people come to you and what you can help with, whether it's confidence, but even will your body tolerate certain supplements or things? What are the general things that people come to you for, and what does a session with you look like?
Well, because my basis is very much chiropractic, I have a lot of chiropractors and osteopaths that refer clients to me, where they're structurally putting the person back into alignment, but the person's still experiencing a lot of pain and discomfort, and they can't work out why. And they've heard about me, so they just say, well, she might be able to help. So I worked a lot with where people do have pain, discomfort going on. But I think, because I had a child myself, and he's 26 now, but it was really strange because before that I hardly ever treated younger people, and it was like suddenly I was treating like lots of younger people. And I'm working an awful lot now with anxiety, health anxiety, and it has increased, interesting enough, this last year, not the time of the pandemic. It's actually been the last year that I have noticed the impact on people from that. So when we go to work, what I'm always starting off with really is, what is it? What's the issue? What is it that you are looking for some help with? And then from that point on, I surrogate myself for you. It's like, how does that work? So again, I'm tapping up into that super unconsciousness. You are there. You've given me your permission, even if it's by email. I have the permission. But I then ask energy permission to work together right now, because sometimes the body might go, oh, do you know what? It isn't okay right now. I've had that happen 3 times in my career. I've told the people, I'm really sorry, I just don't have permission to work with you. And it's been so weird because they've sent me loads of people, because they go, if she can't help you, she'll just tell you straight away. And I'm like, but isn't it interesting, the fact that you've said, oh, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do right now. But then once I've got the permission, I'm asking, of all the things that I know, what do we need to do in order to bring balance in? And sometimes we might be releasing an unprocessed emotion. So we are who we are now, but it's based on loads of experiences that we've had in our lives, plus what our ancestors have been through. So a lot of what's been going on in the last 3 or 4 years has triggered off deep ancestral fear, panic, terror, overwhelm, anxiety. So I often find that that can come up. Doesn't always, which is why I love it. And the body will also only release things in the order that is happiest to do so. Because if I might think, oh, they've had heartache in their life, yeah, we really need to release that heartache. But the body says, no, it just won't give me permission. And it will be like, I'm doing nothing. But if I do things in the right order, then what happens is the energy system gently unfolds the angst that it's been holding on to, but it lets it go without the client feeling traumatized. And I work a lot with people that have been through forms of abuse, all sorts of forms of abuse, and they may have been counseling for years. And then they suddenly go, I just need to try something else. And so I'll say, well, you don't have to do it instead. We'll do it alongside. So therefore, if you then need to go and talk about it, you've got your counsellor. And the people that have done that have moved forward immensely, because we're clearing the trauma that's caught in this energy field. So it's like that, going into that room, that place, and just going, ooh. But that's where it is. Our energy field is where we're holding all our experiences, all our emotions, all our memories. We think it's in here, but it's actually in our energy field, which is why I believe energy therapies are coming into their own, really and truly. And then when the body gets to the point where it's starting, I'd say, to play me around a little bit, so I'm not getting permission to go forward, there's nothing else that it's wanting at that point, because very often it just needs 10, 20 minutes of nothingness after a session. Then we end the session. Sometimes there's homework, sometimes there's not. It really depends on the individual. So that's, as I said before, why I get so excited about what I do, because no 2 sessions, even for the same person, are ever the same.
All I'm aware is that I'm absolutely knackered afterwards and I have to really sleep. But, while it's going on, I'm not necessarily aware. Are you able to explain what it feels like to you? Is it a physical feeling?
So when I first started, I used to feel everything that I was working on with the clients, which was not great from me. It wasn't so much about the protection, because obviously that does come into it. But what it was more was where I had unresolved trauma in my own energy system, that if I was working with someone and they had a similar frequency to what I hadn't resolved myself, my stuff was getting triggered off. not within the session, but later on that day, and I would just not feel great. So one of the things that I always do is every morning, is there anything I need to be clearing on myself? And I do the same thing at night. And after doing it for so many years, I rarely get anything. To begin with, it was a bit. But when I'm actually doing the corrections, it's like I don't feel the emotion the person has, but what I get is like this build up of tension that happens. And then suddenly, as the body lets go and releases, it's like happens. It's just like this deep yawn. I often yawn when I'm working. And it's that nervous system is resetting itself. At the end of the session, I feel as energized as I did at the beginning. Clients don't, because they're having to release and let go all of that stuff, which is why this isn't how I work. It's not a weekly event. You need to do the work, and then you need to let the physical and the subtle energy fields come into harmony and into balance. And that can take 10 to 14 days, sometimes even 3 to 4 weeks for some people. Does that mean that there's something more wrong with them? No. It's just to do with where the impact is and how much someone has been through, really.
And you would suggest it's always better to have more than one session, and usually at least a couple of weeks apart. How many minimum would you say?
Well, it's interesting. I work very much with people that just want to give it a go, just to see if it works. And so I do what I call standalone mode, where I'm just doing one session that's all by itself. It doesn't need any other pieces in order to work deeper. And that works so well for when we're not sure if it's for us, because you're just focusing in on like one topic and shifting it through. Now, say someone came and they had anxiety, and they may have only had the anxiety for 3 or 4 months. One session might be all it is that we need to do. But if someone's had anxiety for 2, 3, 4 years or even longer, then often it's 2 or 3 sessions. But how I would normally do it is at the end of the first session, I'll say, how many more do we need to do to see a significant improvement? Because I will be honest, when you think how many clients I've worked with over those decades, there's always going to be work that you can do. But what we're always wanting is, how many do we need to do to a significant difference? And that varies. It's often 2, can be 3. But often with that, it's about 3 to 6 weeks in between groups of work.
Are you asking someone's body that?
Yeah. So when I'm muscle testing, when I'm surrogating you for me, and I'm saying, right now, to deal with your issue, whatever that is, how many groups of work do we need to do? And I'm going at least 1, at least 2, at least 3. And when the muscle changes, but often it's 1 or 2 sessions, because I think I've done it for so long. Where I'm finding it's going to be more is where we've got the pandemic. That seems to have been the thing that's really changed things. Before that, it would be like 1, maybe 2 sessions. I have some people that I might do 1 or 2 sessions, and they come back 10 years later and say, oh, I suddenly thought about you and thought, oh, I'll have a follow-up. And I've got quite a number of people that have done that over the years. So it isn't something that you will be doing forever. It isn't something that, oh my goodness, if I don't do 4, then there's going to be no change, because I'm always looking for there to be some change that's going on. But I look at it a bit like the foundations for the house. So the first session, you're putting in those foundations. You don't necessarily see anything above the ground, but it's what's going on underneath. And then you start to build up on that. But people always surprise me. They just surprise me, because sometimes they will just go on the second one, everything's so different. I can't believe it. It's so different. Can we work on something else? And I'll go, well, no, we still really need to finish that piece, because even though you're feeling better, what we're needing is to make things more robust.
But it's also, you have is it a magnet that you
Yes, there's my magnet. It's I use it to release the charge behind sensations. So we use this over what's called the governing meridian. So lots of people have heard of acupuncture, and we have 14 main meridians. And so we have the governing, which starts at the base of the coccyx and comes in up into here, up on the gum. Now, one of the kinesiologies, one of the therapies that I use is called the body emotion code. And he actually was a chiropractor, Bradley Nelson, who founded it. And it was so interesting because when he founded it was the time I, as a chiropractor, was looking for what is going on. Why are people not improving in the way that, that they're all structurally back in alignment? Why are they still in pain? And what he found by accident was that if he used a magnet and went over the opposite way, so from the end of the meridian, governing meridian to the back, and the governing meridian is very much linked in with the brain and thought, which links in with the emotions and everything like that, that it would take the charge out of the emotion, and so then the body would be able to release it. And if you think of a credit card, so that little bar on the back of the card, it's got all your account information. But if you put it near a magnet, the card doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. And I just find it fascinating because he was looking for it at the same time as I was looking for it. And that's often how things have happened in life. So I use that, and I don't do a lot of talking. My work is not a talking therapy. I'm very much of the mindset that if talking about it was going to help, you wouldn't be coming to me. I tend not to, well, now I do, but I tend never to get people that have only had something going on for a few weeks or months. They're usually, I'm the bottom of the barrel of the choice of where they're going to go. They've tried everything else, and then they're just like, is there anything you can do? And I'll say, I honestly don't know, but let's give it a go. Because you can't guarantee at all anything that's going to happen. So, but one of the things I say to people very soon into the session is, this isn't a talking. There's just no point in you going round the same story. Let's just see where the energetic imbalances are. So we might use the magnet. We might place hands on the body. We might think things. But the yawning and the sighing, and sometimes people get tummy gurgles, is where the nervous system is starting to release the stress and tension and let go. So I'm actually looking for the yawning and the sighing. I often think if anyone listened in on the calls, they'd just go, what is going on?
Yeah, they would, I guess.
Yes.
What I noticed when we had the sessions with the magnet, and when I mentioned it to you, you were quite surprised. Sometimes when, like, just after you've done a yawn or just before something has clearly happened, whether you're using the magnet or not, there's been some kind of energetic flash on the screen that you're clearly not doing physically. But I always found that really interesting, that I could almost feel it. I could see it.
I don't know what that is. I've had probably 2 or 3 people plus yourself say it. So, but my eyes are always closed when I'm working. I have no idea, but I do know that there are times in the past where I have blown the lights in the room when I've been working.
Wow.
Thankfully, that doesn't happen so much now with the LED bulbs. But yes, I remember many years ago when my son was little and he was pushing my buttons, and I just was walking through the flat and I just said, why do you do that? And as I did it, all the light bulbs went. So you then put this little sign on his door, Mum, keep out.
Wow, that must have freaked you out. My goodness.
It did. It actually did. So after that, I was like, keep my hands down. But I think, again, like with the screen, it has to be picking up some energy. I don't understand it, but it would kind of make sense to me because it's an energy change, isn't it? It's a transformation. So you're changing something that's quite hard and nodular and not comfortable. And the way that I'm looking at it is we are putting so much light into it that it almost means no darkness, no shadow can be in there.
Yeah. One of my questions would normally be, how do you know that this is working? But you've basically told me is that you've got people coming back again and again and again over years and bringing other people with
Yes.
them, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've got clients that I first treated as a chiropractor and then went on to do some kinesiology, and I've treated their children and now their grandchildren.
Wow.
That makes me feel old. Yeah, and yeah, skeptics, I'll be honest with you, I quite like a skeptic
Yeah.
from the point of view that whatever you do is going to be okay, because if it doesn't work, they'll go, see, I told you it didn't work. But often they so believe it won't work, but they're going to do it anyway, that then they have some benefit. The people that I find the absolute hardest to work with are the ones that truly believe it works.
Wow.
Because their expectations are so high that you're going to be able to wave a magic wand,
Right.
that they're not going to have to work, they're not going to have to do anything themselves to change it. It's all going to be down to me. And that isn't, when I'm working with someone, it's a partnership. It's you're showing up, I'm showing up, and we're seeing what we can do to clear the energy.
I love the fact that actually, even if you're completely a non-believer, it could still very much work for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my partner, when I met him, he said, you're very spiritual, aren't you? And I went, am I? Because I don't really think of myself that way. And he said, oh, I don't believe in any of that stuff. And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. So I thought, well, this will be the first and last date. But what ended up happening is over the years, and I've noticed he started sort of like, if he gets a cold or something, he'll go, do you think you can see if there's anything you can do? Then if there's an ache or a pain. And now, if anything goes wrong, he goes, can we do some work? And he's the most unbeliever that I've ever known. But I do find it funny because he balances me out, because I can be a little bit like out there sometimes. And he's very, very grounded. So yeah, but I also work a lot with very young children, and I've worked with people that can't speak. And yet what's happened, the changes that the carers have noticed has been so immense that, oh my gosh, I just wish there was a way that we could sort of like document it, prove it. But it's that experience, isn't it? And I've worked a lot with my clients. They'll say, oh, my pony or my dog or my cat's not feeling very well. Can you see what it wants? And I'll just say, okay, I said, I'm not a vet. I can't work that way, but let's just see if there is something that's an imbalance, and then go from there. And the amount of times we've done work and then the vet's gone, I don't understand how is it feeling better now?
What's interesting is that you've come from a chiropractic background. Yeah,
Yes.
that's you've come from, in inverted commas, black and white medical place.
Yes.
And to get here, I mean, that's, that must give people solace as well, I think, when they're, if
I
they're
think so, because people will say, oh, well, you're more grounded, aren't you, because you're a chiropractor? And I'm like,
grounded, that's one way.
I was like, I suppose so. I said, but I don't do chiropractic anymore. I said, because literally, if I look at it this way around, then it makes much more sense to me. And they go, yeah, but because you were a chiropractor, that must mean you know what you're doing. I do find it interesting that the way that people think and justify.
Yeah, you've got the rubber stamp there, so it's okay,
Yes.
even though it's not really got
Nothing to do with it, really.
Yeah, exactly. Are you able to share a major success story with us? I mean, the person who can't speak, I mean, that was a huge one, I'm sure, but
That's right. I mean, it wasn't so that the person could speak, but it was just the fact that they weren't well. But I mean, one of my big ones, who's I'm now doing the grandchildren of, this was when I first started. So I was chiropractic, and he had to come in, and he was from head to toe red raw. I mean, red raw, the skin. And I was actually apprehensive about doing any chiropractic on him, but he had, his back was bad, and he just said, he says, I've been like this, he said, for months now, In fact, years he said, doctors don't know what it is, doesn't hurt, but it's just really not very nice. And so, because I was, experimenting at that point, I said, well, can I just use you, just to see what's going on? Anyway, it came down that it was aluminium toxicity. And so I was thinking, aluminium. I said, oh, maybe it's what you're cooking with, or something like that. And he went, no. He said, I make my own wine.
Oh,
And he said, I put them in aluminium kegs. So I said, well, I'll do a correction. I said, but it won't be enough, because if you're going to keep then going and drinking the wine and doing that. Anyway, I thought he'll never do it. He won't. He just won't do it, because he was really skeptical of me suggesting it in the first place. Anyway, he came back about 6 weeks later, didn't recognise him. No redness. He'd gone back and he told his wife. They changed the way that he made his wine and stored it. And I'd never even heard of using aluminium kegs.
me neither.
Personally.
And I've been wine for 23 years.
I know. But when was this? This was 93. Tell me.
But how did you know it was that specifically? You tapped into.
So I was saying, it's like a menu. So I was looking, are we looking, is it a psychological imbalance? Is it physical? Is it nutritional? Is it biochemical? And so and then from there you go down and down and down until you finally get to like one or two options. And then you're just asking the body, okay, which one of these, if any of them, is causing the problem? But because I was still very, very new at it, I was a bit like, well, I don't know, but this is what your system's come up with. But
Yeah.
again, that shifted things so much. And then about 10 years ago, had a lady come to the clinic, and she'd had many heartaches, and she couldn't find anybody to share her life with. Boyfriends didn't last more than a date. She was a beautiful person, inside and out, absolutely beautiful. And her sister had said, go to Amanda, just see what she can do. So anyway, we did what's called a heart wall session, where you're releasing the wall of emotions that the subconscious has placed around your heart in order to keep you safe. And so we did that, and then we did what was called a being, not beings, where being something is stressful, but not being is stressful. So it's like a tug of war going on in the system. So we did that in the session. And 6 weeks later, I think it was less than that, she went on a blind date, and she met a man, married him 18 months later, and they are so happy. So the thing is you hear stories like that, and they're just two. I mean, I had somebody yesterday that says, I can't tell you how much better I feel today. It's amazing what you've done. And I'm regularly getting emails and texts like that. And I just think I have the best job.
That's so lovely. So why don't you tell people where to find you?
You can find me at my website, which is the www.findyourinnerharmony.co.uk. The most important thing I will say to you, when you go to work with somebody, you must get a feel that you like them. As you know, it can be quite emotional. You can have things come up, and you need to feel that you're in a safe space.
Amanda Brooks, it's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So this was meaty.
It was meaty.
So meaty, almost a little bit too much to take in for my adult brain, but I did understand it. And like I mentioned earlier, how she draws on so many different types of therapy and then tailors what is specifically needed per client. Really respect that. And I think it's a really thoughtful approach.
It is. I mean, there's a real sort of refreshingness about Amanda, isn't there? A bit like there was with Jess, I think, when we spoke to her about just like, look, this is how it is. You'll get more out of it if you're open to it, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask for actually what you need. I think that was a huge takeaway here. So, like that conversation we had with Jessica Lynn, the psychic medium, what I'm really taking away from all of this is actually, like, the more open you are, not prescriptive, but the more open you are about what might happen or what might not happen and what you want out of it, the more you're actually going to get out of it, because that opens up your energy field, which I know that sounds sounds a bit funny when you say it like that, but you're gonna get more out of it that way. And I thought that was a really nice link with that. And also, it reminds me of the conversation we had with Christina about chi and life force energy as well. But then it also reminded me about the conversation we had with Emily King, who was our somatic sex therapist, about how so much information is stored in the body. It really, it was meaty. It was definitely meaty.
And for me, I think she, more than anyone, and any reading I've done, has summed up very succinctly and very simply the dilemma of the quantum domain is in all of this. It's how you've got the linear proof led kind of stuff that is scientifically provable, and then the non-linear, non-provable stuff, which is all about the human experience, which you can't really capture, and only one person can have that themselves. So there's never ever just one study to sum up a general experience of a population. And so, where I am not explaining it very well, I think she did really well. And yeah, it hit the nail on the head. And it very much helped me channel exactly what she was saying and what she's trying to do with people.
Well, I mean, millions and millions of practitioners worldwide and their clients can't be wrong, right? That is the thing. If they keep coming back for more, for anywhere, all these people, they cannot all be charlatans, quite simply.
I can see how a cynic can pick up on the whole power of suggestion side of things, or placebo effect, which we do know can totally be true. Basically, sometimes I can administer the placebo effect on myself if I'm convinced enough to put myself in a situation where my body feels calm enough, but nothing's really changed. So it's that kind of power of suggestion. I can convince myself otherwise. Maybe I don't know. I'm doing some kinesiology on myself. But do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I do, and she also says as much. And if you look into it, a lot of like the preparation for this is intention and putting yourself in the right mind space and essentially changing your own frequency or vibration, for want of a better word, to be in that place. So I think the placebo effect is a bit misleading in that regard, because it gets you to change your mindset, which actually helps with the whole process, so that it's not a bad thing, it's part of it.
And yeah, the whole placebo effect is actually rendered redundant because if it's having an effect, it's not placebo, is it? It's an effect and it's helped and has results.
Mm. Placebo are a great band, though. I've got to say that.
Oh, I love them.
Going back to Amanda, where we're talking about getting your frequencies and your vibration in the right place, or in the same place, so that you could so she can work on you. It's fascinating to think how it affects her as well, and how she has to do work on herself as well, isn't it?
This was my favorite takeaway from the whole thing. And I'm an overthinker. I've been trying to understand energies and experiencing different energies in the room and seeing, what's yours, what's mine, what can I leave behind, so not, have it affect me for the rest of the day. One thing I've never even considered is that matching vibration theory, that somewhere can feel like home, even if it's encompassing a really negative vibe. She explains it by the dangers of going into a new house, viewing a new house. And if you're in a bad place, you may feel at home there if there's a bad vibe there. You've got two negatives meeting, and that's quite a dangerous space to be in, isn't it? I've always thought about reading someone's energy as just, it's purely a positive thing because you're already aware. But actually, yeah, if you're in a dark place, you could seek out the dark places too, but feel comfortable there.
I see what you're saying. It's funny that, because when I think about absorbing other people's energy, I always go straight to the negative. I could tell if someone's words aren't quite matching what what their energy is saying, and it's very, very conflicting. And that's definitely an HS penis thing as well.
That is definitely your penis talking to you.
That is my penis, but it's caused problems because, actually going back to the HSP chat with the whole energy, it's really hard if you're having a conversation with someone and the words they are saying do not match that, because you can't argue with words they're not saying.
Yeah. And you could be accused of making an assumption and just calling them a liar.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but get a little few exorcist vibes when she talks about being the surrogate.
What were you imagining?
Well, reading the body. Like I doubt it is like this. But at the time, I was feeling like, oh, so does she embody that person's word and thoughts? Like, does she get possessed almost?
I think that's a different modality. That's the kind of thing that Jessica Lynn and the mediumship was all about. She's reading your energy on a quantum level.
But the fact that she mentions about asking permission, doesn't she? But I think that's permission just to read that person's body. But in the back of my mind, I was imagining like the power of Christ compels you. Little thoughts in my head. But clearly, it's much more sensitive and not as ridiculous as that.
Maybe it is interesting that you can be on the call and go, yeah, do your stuff, but your body's like, nah, nah, nah. And the fact that she will tell you if that is the case and just be like, soz, babe, I won't charge you. So it ain't happening.
I definitely would love a kinesiology session because I have been talking my butt off for years and years, and it's been amazing and revelationary and helpful. It's life-saving, I'd say. But there is now definitely the actual shift needs to happen. So I would quite, there is probably something still sort of stuck and unspoken that I can't access during talk therapy. So I would really love to give this a go. I'm a bit terrified because I don't know what's going to come out.
It's part of it. If it comes out, it needs to be out, and then you'll get better.
Exactly. Don't want to be constipated with the negative.
Well, on that lovely note of constipation and negativity, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. Thank you again so much for listening. Your support means the world to us. Do subscribe to our newsletter because that's finally started to go out. Whippy, whippy! And don't forget to tell your friends all about the pod and to rate us because that helps bump us up the charts. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.